It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans. Welcome back to the Locked On MLB YouTube channel. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. On today's episode, we are going to be bringing in yet another guest who's going to be talking about his team, which is, let's just be kind and say they've made a few interesting decisions around the trade deadline and have made their fans a little bit uneasy, which is saying something. And it's the team that I have kind of sort of adopted. So it's a little bit of a therapy session for both of us. Let's bring on the brand new host of Locked On Mariners. It's Ty Dane Gonzalez. Let's bring you into the show. How are you doing, Ty?
I'm great, Sully. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to talking some ball with you.
Okay, before we get going here, because you're brand new show, we wish DC all the best. Your predecessor at Locked On Mariners. So you're brand new to the Locked On Podcast Network. Welcome aboard. Now, you are in Ontario. So how did this come about? Were you just a big Alvin Davis fan? Did you just grow up looking at Jay Buhner? I mean, what's going on? I said, hey, if it's me or Jamie Moyer. I mean, what compelled? Or are you from the Northwest?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Washington for about 12 years. I've moved around quite a bit. I moved to New Mexico when I was 12 years old, and then I met my wife online, came up here. She lived here in Canada, and now I'm a permanent resident in Canada.
Well, I've bounced around too as growing up, so I get that. I absolutely get that. So just so I know the era of Mariner fandom, who was your guy growing up?
For me, I got to go with Mike Cameron. Love Mike Cameron.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Who was
Mike Cameron was awesome.
The big trade chip in the Ken Griffey Jr. trade, by the way. For those,
indeed.
I saw Ken Griffey Jr. play for the San Bernardino Spirit in the minor leagues, and I had a wonderful time watching him and everything. So I do have a love for the Mariners, even though I'm a go Cougs. I'm a proud. Got my first master's degree from Washington State University, and I have right nearby me. I have my. I wore this to the Angels game the other day. Got my Trident.
There you go.
Got my Trident Mariners shirt, and my personal favorite Seattle Mariners hat, which is this one here, the Trident with the star. I love this. I call this the Alvin Davis special. Right there.
Nice.
There you go.
Indeed, right there. Right there.
I want them to go back to these. I want them to go back to these. Go back to the Trident with the star. That's what I want.
I don't know if you'll get the star, but there have been some rumors out there that they might incorporate the Trident again.
Okay, I mean, I dig the Trident. I do. I like that, but this is my personal favorite one there. The one with the star. That reminds me of those teams that the Mariners had in the late '80s, where they looked like they were on the verge with Mark Langston and Harold Reynolds and Mike Moore and Alvin Davis. I love bringing up Alvin Davis and Brantley and Jim Presley and all those players who were just like they just seemed like if everything they almost were ready to click, and then things went badly. But
things happen in Mariners fashion. True Mariners.
Yes, that's true. That's true. There's a team with the longest postseason drought is doing everything in their power to continue that for another year. It's bewildering to me that they made the move when they made the move for Kendall Graveman. I'll just jump right in there. They were on the cusp of becoming a wild card team, and they just had their most emotional victory with the Grand Slam game against Houston, where they were down, 7-0, 8-0, or something crazy like that. And then they trade Kendall Graveman to the other dugout and made the trade for Castillo. And they've had, 3 or 4 walk-off losses in the 2 weeks since that's happened. And they've just fallen off a cliff. I mean, what's the mood in Mariner land, and what the heck was that trade all about?
All right, so I'm actually kind of the high man on the trade, and I'll explain why in a second. But
That's why I have you on board.
yeah, I'm not going to defend the timing of it. The timing of it was awful. But the idea of trading 2 months of Kendall Graveman for Abraham Toro, who has 4.5 years of club control at a position that might be of great need for you next year, depending on what you do with Kyle Seager's club option, is smart. And when, going into this year, you didn't think that you were going to be competing in general. Jerry DiPoto thought that he was going to have money to spend, and that was kind of ripped away from him with ownership. So they made middling moves and ended up not really doing a ton to move the needle. And they went into the year thinking, well, this is going to be about development. This is going to be basically what we thought 2020 was going to be before COVID hit and shortened the season. That it's all about development. And so, they're at the time they were, riding the high of beating the Astros, making that comeback. They were the first team out of the wild card. I think like 2 or 3 games behind the A's at that point. And, but you don't want to divert too much from what your plan is just for the sake of getting into a 1-game playoff against a team that's far better than you, whether that's Tampa, whether that's Toronto, whether that's Oakland, whether, no matter who it is. On paper, all of those teams are better than you. So you don't want to sacrifice that. So, and look, Abraham Toro has been incredible since the trade.
Yes. To be fair, yes.
He's since the trade, he is 4th in Major League Baseball in Fangraphs wins above replacement. Like, he's quite literally been one of the best players in baseball since the trade happened.
And he has multiple home runs. He's driven in a ton of runs, and he's had some in that series against the Yankees, which was not a great series for the Mariners, except for the final game.
Yeah.
He got some big hits in that series.
And he had to step into the leadoff spot because J.P. Crawford went down with an illness, and so he wasn't able to go. So they put him in the leadoff spot. I think he got 5 hits. I think he went 5 for 16 in the whole series.
Yeah, so, I remember watching that game thinking like, man, is Toro a leadoff guy? I mean, I'm always for, I think speed is the most overrated aspect of a leadoff position.
Oh, yeah.
I think and I used to be a Luddite and so stupid about that, like growing up in Boston. And I'm like, why are they putting Wade Boggs in the leadoff spot? He can't run. Yes, his on-base percentage is like 50-50, okay? I think that why not have the guy who's on base the most have the most at-bats? It's a very, very hard concept to understand. But is that a place where he could be kind of a George Springer leadoff, an untraditional leadoff guy?
Yeah, I think, in general, you want your best hitter to get the most at bats, right? And the way to do that is put him in a leadoff spot. They had Mitch.
It's so amazing that that's a revolutionary concept.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you, but it's like when you say it like that, it's like it's so like, well, you want to make sure who has the most at bats, the best player. Meanwhile, there are a lot of times in his Pirates days, Barry Bonds would bat 5th. It's like, really? You have 4 hitters better that you want. Your 4 players you want at bat more than Bonds. Really?
Well, everyone wants the table setter in the first inning. They don't think past the first inning that because they think like, oh, if you put a Barry Bonds or whatever in the leadoff spot, well, if he hits a home run, he's only going to drive in 1 run. But you got to think about it like later on in the game, like when it's really going to matter. That happened in this Yankees series with the Mariners. Ty France has been one of their best hitters this year. He didn't get a chance to hit in the 9th inning when they were starting to rally because they had a lesser hitter, J.P. Crawford, in the leadoff spot. J.P. Crawford has been pretty good this year, but you would rather have Ty France in that spot hitting against Aroldis Chapman.
Yes.
And that, that's the difference right there. If you had Ty France hitting first or second and Mitch Haniger hitting first, you would have Ty France at the plate and feel probably a bit better about your chances in that game.
Well, by the way, I had a moment when we're talking about matchups. This is just, I'm just bringing this up because it has to do with Mariners. I think that if a team makes a pitching change with 2 outs and nobody on, they should have to forfeit a draft pick. I think if we're talking about pace of play, come on, 2 outs, nobody on. Let's stop the game, bring in the reliever, do the warm up like that. And there was a game I was at in Anaheim about
Joe Madden's the worst with it.
Oh my God. With it. And there was 2 outs, nobody on, and Kalenic was the batter. And at the time he was batting 090.
Oh yeah.
And they brought in a reliever, and I thought, do you know what, Joe? Call me a gambler, but I think that righty could get out the batter who's struggling to hit 100. Okay.
Well, also keep in mind, I think it was like 8-2 Mariners at the time.
It was a big lead. The Angels chipped away at that game until at the end. You're right. That was the game where the Angels rallied and they came out just a bit short. In fact, Haniger made the running catch to end the game.
I think that was the game that Ohtani hit the ninth inning home run, if I remember correctly. But yeah, it's just
he got a double. He got a double. He came up, and if he had hit a home run, it would have tied the game. Instead, and so he did get a big hit. And whoever was up, I forget who it was. You forgive me, I'm doing this from memory, but he hit one into the gap, and it was Haniger was in right, and he tracked it down. And if he didn't track it down, it would have gone to the wall and would have been a base clearing double. Anyway, that was a positive day for the Mariners. This has been. Let's be honest, Hoagie, for a second here, because we've been lying this whole time. Let's be honest for 1 second here. This is a positive year for the Mariners. Yeah. This is, when you consider going into this year what they thought they were going to be. If they finish with a winning record, obviously anyone who's following the Mariners wants to see them finally win that World Series title that has been denied Ichiro and Felix and the kid and blah, 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 blah. Okay, fine. We got that out of our system. This is a year where Houston's better than them going into this year. And that Oakland was better than them going into this year. But if they can come out with a winning record and some pieces in place, some pieces with Kikuchi and Flexen in the rotation, Toro, you're going to try Kalenic out there and say, hey, go out there. If you bat 200, bat 200. Just go out there and get your cuts. Crawford's improving in the defense. France is contributing. This is a foundation that if heaven forbid the Mariners are ever allowed to spend any money, that you could see this being, all right, we have a foundation, and now we can go to the free agent market to fill in the holes and give us the final boost, as opposed to just playing whack-a-mole with free agents and sometimes doing it with no sense of rhyme or reason. I'm looking at you, Robinson Cano.
Yeah, well, and that was the thing, when Jerry Dipoto took over as general manager at the end of 2015, they had roughly $100 million in payroll wrapped up in 5 players. And so he wasn't able to add really anything of worth in free agency. And on top of that, they had the worst farm system in baseball thanks to Jack Zduriencik. So now that they've rebuilt.
And keep in mind, all that money was not tied into Ken Griffey Jr., Alex Rodriguez, Edgar Martinez, Randy Johnson, and Ichiro Suzuki. They were not the players, although the way they've been doing, they would probably sign all of them right now for big money to try to say, well, the fans love them.
Yeah, they've done that a little too much. Hopefully they don't cross that bridge again, trying to go down memory lane. But now that they're where they are right now, and you said it best, that having a winning record, building that momentum into next year, because next year is really the year that you start to think about contention. Plus, we just had the report that MLB might try to expand the playoffs to 14 teams, so that helps your chances as well. And that's going to hopefully motivate ownership to spend money, because that's really what it comes down to, is ownership. It comes down to John Stanton, the owner, to allow Jerry Dipoto to go out in free agency and spend money, because they're going to be well below $100 million in payroll. And when they had Cano and when they had Cruz and when they had all those guys on the books, they were at 160, 170. So they have been willing to spend. So they don't necessarily have to get back there. They don't need to spend a crazy amount of money just to spend. You don't want to do that just for the sake of it. But there's no excuse now. The team is winning. They've shown you that there are pieces in place, and they've shown you in these games where, they played against the Dodgers and they played against the Yankees and they played against the Rays. They don't look super far off from a lot of these teams that they're competing with.
The way they played the Astros. The Astros won some of the games there, but the Mariners didn't look like overwhelmed chumps in that series.
Even in their 4 games against the Dodgers this year, right? Dodgers world beaters, incredible baseball team, from top to bottom.
The Frankenstein monster, as I call them, with all the stitched together from other pennant winners.
And they didn't get blown out by them.
No.
And so even you look at this last road trip, obviously not a great road trip. It's put them pretty far back in the wild card chase, which is not great. They still have time to make up, but we'll see. But you look at the teams like the Blue Jays, the Yankees, the A's, the Red Sox, they're all flawed, just like they are. And they're able to hang right there with them. So ownership needs to see that and give Jerry Dipoto the freedom, because especially now, not only could he have the payroll flexibility, he also has one of the best farm systems in baseball and one of the deepest farm systems in baseball that has a ton of prospects that are very valuable around the league. He has bullets to go out and trade for guys and not feel like he's sacrificing the whole farm, which was the case 3 years ago, where his most valuable trade chip was Kyle Lewis. And if he traded Kyle Lewis, it felt like it was a death in the family pretty much at that point, because there was nothing else in their farm system. It was completely depleted. So now, you can maybe think about trading a Noel V. Marte or an Emerson Hancock or George Kirby or something, a package of 2 of your top 10 guys or 3 of your top 10 guys for Herman Marquez or what have you, a legit ace,
right?
And not feel terrible about it. And then if you have the financial backing from ownership and you can go out and maybe go after a Marcus Semien or a Chris Bryant or someone like that in free agency, you should, this team could legitimately compete for a division next year.
Yeah, if you get a Marquez along with a Kikuchi and a Flexen and some of the other arms they have in there, that's not too far back from what Houston and Oakland has now.
Yeah. So
you're right. Well, look it, man. It's you came here and I wanted to talk a little Mariners, and you see the glass is, if not half full, at least there's water in the glass, which is which has been a long time coming for Mariner fans. So I'm looking forward to hearing more from you on your podcast. Where can people catch your podcasts?
Yeah, so it's on every platform where you guys, wherever you prefer your podcasts, Spotify, Apple, all that good stuff. You can follow us on Twitter at @LO_Mariners to stay up to date whenever we're releasing new stuff. You can follow me on Twitter at Dane Gonzalez, DANEGNZLZ. You can also follow my co-host Colby Patnode at CPAT11, CPAT11. And we're going to be, we just started, we released our first episode this afternoon, looked back at the Yankee series, talked about maybe if this was Jared Kelenich's breakout series, and previewed the upcoming series with the Rangers.
It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.